Yo, what is up, YouTube? And today we're going to be bringing you a video that a lot of you guys requested in the Discord. If you guys are not in the Discord, there'll be a link below. Yeah, the video is just a matchups kind of spreadsheet against all the top tiers. And in my opinion, these are the four top tiers in the game. Some of them are better in some scenarios. For the most part, these are the best supports. And we are going to be running down the list of viable supports over here and have their matchup sheet, matchup layout laid out against all these gods. And yeah, we'll just jump right in and we'll start with Yemoja. Yemoja is widely considered the best god in the game. I mean, the best god in support. Maybe the game too for some people. The reason is just because she's very hard to play against. She has a good laning phase and then her late game is completely broken. Ares has got a pretty even matchup into her. You're forced into going beads, but with Yemoja, because of how strong her kit is, she doesn't really mind that. But Ares is one of the few gods that can just kind of punish her, try to get her beads. He can group the wave. The early game is really important for Yemoja and like Ares and just how it plays out. For the most part, even matchup. RDO has a very bad matchup into Yemoja. She has way too much pressure. RDO is kind of like that god that you want to win the laning phase, and against Yemoja, you're not really guaranteed it. If you feel like you're going to be getting just locked down and beat down on by this RDO, just buy beads. Cripples don't really affect her either. You can just 3 out of them also. Yemoja, good matchup into RDO. Bacchus, like a big thing you're going to see is a lot of these aggressive gods, Yemoja just builds beads and it's very hard to punish her. Bacchus is another one, not a great matchup. You flop in, she beads it, and then she just turns ults and tries to kill you. I do think the anti-heal does make him a little bit more viable than RDO. He's also a little bit safer to get over those walls that Yemoja can bring up. Cabrakan, we'll say Cabrakan has a decent matchup into her. I think it's like an even matchup. Cabrakan can kind of like lock her down. The one thing that Yemoja really has no counter to is walls. And Cabrakan's, however, it is an ult, but it's still a wall that she has a hard time playing into. He's also slow immune in his 1. Yemoja's very reliant on slows in her ult in her 1. And then he just has an easier time diving the backline than most gods. But Yemoja does turn onto Cabrakan pretty easily. Cabrakan goes in, Yemoja throws up her ult and just tries to burn the Cabrakan. But I do think Cabrakan still has a decent matchup. And this is the first god that I actually think has a good matchup into Yemoja. It is pretty hard to get stunned out of your 2 on Serb. You have anti-heal in your passive. You have a lot of CC to get out Yemoja's beads. Slows are good into Yemoja. You force out her 3s and then you punish her after. And then you can jump over her walls. It's not a great matchup because Yemoja is still strong early. She still builds beads and she's still a late game just menace. But I think Cerberus is one of the better matchups into Yemoja that you're going to be able to get. Athena, just a slight disadvantage or even. You're not really going to win the laning phase against Yemoja. You're just going to play to live and kind of just be a better late game god than her. And I think he does that okay. It just depends if you can live the laning phase and just play for that late game. So I think it's a pretty even matchup. Ganesh, absolutely terrible god. But I don't think he's that bad into Yemoja. He can dash over the walls. He can kind of lock her down. If she's playing too aggressive, the silence is pretty helpful. Tries to burst her. His ult is okay into Yemoja. She can just 3 out of it though. It's still better than RDO's. Geb is probably the worst god to pick into Yemoja. Slows are very hard for Geb to play into because you're kind of relying on not getting slowed or CC'd out of it. And Yemoja has one way to slow you, another way to knock you out of it. And then Yemoja's late game is just what Geb would like his late game to be. She's got easier to hit, well, long range stuns, maybe not easier to hit, but long range stuns. She's got safety. She's got a giant wall that Geb does not have. She's got a shield and a heal that Geb only has 1 of them. And then she can use multiple abilities and Geb has 12-second cooldowns late game. So Geb is actually a very bad matchup into Yemoja. You're just going to get stomped early and you're not going to do as much late game. Hercules. I think Herc is another god that has a pretty good matchup into Yemoja. You're kind of just playing to snowball though, unlike Serb where you can kind of still have that good late game into her. But Herc is one of the few gods that can actually just stomp the Yemoja. You just kind of just pluck her back to your team. If she gets plucked, you pull out her beads. So the thing is Herc can kind of pull beads without relying on his 90-second cooldown ult. And that's why I think Herc actually has a decent matchup. However, if Herc does fall behind, he'll become pretty worthless pretty quickly, especially compared to the Yemoja. So it's kind of a play at your own risk. But if you can get ahead with the Herc, it's a very good matchup. Boris, same kind of like Herc, but it's just a slightly better late game and a slightly better time into Yemoja because the CC is just easier. But it's basically the same thing as Herc. It just kind of stuns her, knocks her up. If she's forced to beads there, she won't have her beads for the next 160 seconds. And then he could just 3 out or ult out if he ever tries to get gone on. I think Horus is a better Hercules in this regard, but I don't think Hercules is that much worse. I would keep him kind of in the same tier. Slight advantage over Yemoja. Khepri, another one that has just a bad matchup. You're just going to get locked down, stunned, CC'd, tossed back. Your defensive kit is just not as good as Yemoja's. I think the one thing Khepri has is a little bit better time killing who's ever in front of him, because if you just toss your 2 on the enemy and then sunder them, it's just you reduce more of their protections, make them take more damage than Yemoja does with Sunder in her 1. So I think that's the one thing Khepri would do better than Yemoja, but Yemoja's kit is just basically a better Khepri kit. The one thing is maybe if they have a full dive comp and they're just trying to kill one of your characters, a full pick dive comp, Khepri may be a little bit better just because of his ult, but for the most part, Yemoja is just a better Khepri. Kumba, I don't think Kumba has a good matchup in anyone. I don't really care to talk about it too much because I just think Kumba needs heavy rework. Squid Hat, thank you for the follow, man. Yeah, so I think Kumba just needs like a pretty heavy rework or a lot of buffs, a lot of places for him to be viable. But I do think he actually has a good chance to be a pick into Yemoja if his kit is a little bit better. Getting Yemoja out of a fight by just ulting her and then diving the carries is a sick way to play it. Also, he can kind of pull out her beads pretty easily, pretty early. The thing is, his laning phase is so bad. His mid game is so bad. His kit is just not that good. If you kind of think about it, if Kumba's kit gets a little bit better, maybe you can pay him into Yemoja. Kuzenbo, I think Kuzenbo's a not great matchup into Yemoja, but he's just very hard to kill. Again, it's another god that pulls out beads with just quick cooldowns. For your 3, you can maybe pull out our beads. The slow is kind of nice, but his type of kit is not good into Yemoja. She just heals up his damage, and Kuzenbo hates playing against healing. That is the one thing I think Kuzenbo has a very hard time playing into, and it's healing. Just be careful playing Kuzenbo into healing. I know it's not a video about Kuzenbo, but just a quick tidbit. Yeah, don't play him into healer. Just bad matchup into Yemoja. I actually think Mulan has a good chance at being pretty viable in support. The problem is most of her kit has a bad time playing into Yemoja. You kind of want to get close to Yemoja to like trade into her, and then you're getting slowed and you can't really get away. So you're basically just all-inning and hoping to win that all-in, which she can do, kind of like Hercules. But I just don't think she does pull actives as good as these gods, and she's not as safe as these 2 gods. So I would think she's fine, and if you can snowball against the Yemoja, she's probably all right, but I just wouldn't play her. I'd lean more towards these warriors. Sylvanas, absolutely terrible. He's a healer, and he relies on like healing protections to keep his team alive. She's just a healer with a shield. She also, her kit just does way more than Sylvanas's. I don't even know what else to say because Sylvanas will get destroyed by Yemoja, and I think that's the biggest thing with Sylvanas right now is the top tiers all just destroy him. If you look at Yemoja, Athena, Sobek, Ymir, all just dominate Sylvanas, and it's going to be hard for him to play until these gods are just worse. Terra's a pretty even matchup. You kind of are Yemoja, but with just a little less in your kit. They're both countered by Ankh because of how reliant on healing they are. I think Yemoja's ult is a little bit better if the enemy team is going to be building Ankh, and they probably will against these 2 gods. And that's like the biggest gripe against Terra is she's a healer, and her entire ult and most of her kit is relying on healing, and Yemoja's not really relying on healing. She's a healer with like a wall and CC and safety for a team with 3s and protections and a shield. Terra's defensive peeling nature is CC and healing. So if you just compare them, Yemoja's is just better. The one thing I think Terra does have that makes her decent in Yemoja is she's knockup immune when she has her walls down, and Yemoja tries to rely on her 3 a lot of the time. It allows Terra to just kind of walk up and play safe, and if Yemoja wants to try to kill the Terra, she's forced to ult. Xingqian, another one that's just a good pick into Yemoja because of how safe he is and how hard he is to go on. If you were playing for early game, don't pick Xingqian, but if you're just playing to late game, try to just dive and get as many abilities thrown at you as possible and just try to live. I think Xingqian does that really well. He avoids kind of the laning phase strength that Yemoja has through his safety in his 3, his ult, his root. And roots are very good into Yemoja because she cannot get through her 3 when she's rooted, and that's where a lot of her safety comes through. Actually, I'm not going to say slight advantage. I'm going to say just even, because he's definitely worse than these gods off against Yemoja, but he's all right. He has some viability in some places against her. Ymir, I think Ymir has a pretty slight disadvantage against Yemoja. Most of what his kit is designed to do is just done a little bit better by Yemoja, and she's safer with it. Her damage is not quite as strong as Ymir's, and Ymir's wall is definitely a bit stronger, but she has CC like he does, zoning control with her 3 ult. She has healing that the Ymir doesn't have, and then if it comes down to it, Yemoja just has a little bit more safety. If Ymir tries to all-in her, then Yemoja can all-in Ymir, and Ymir doesn't have as much safety. He just basically has to throw up his wall and ult or just ult. So yeah, I think Ymir is actually a pretty bad pick into Yemoja. Sobek, I'm a crocodile. Probably the best pick you can have into Yemoja. It's another thing of not relying on an ultimate cooldown like these 2 gods to kill the Yemoja. You just pluck her and she is forced to beads, or she'll die a lot in the early game. He also applies anti-heal like the Serb. Yemoja likes getting CC'd and then just dropping her entire kit on the target that's trying to kill her. So she gets plucked, she beads as the pluck, drops a bunch of 1s, ults. Sobek is so tanky and so hard to deal with like current tank boots, current Sobek protections, ult, heal in his 3, safety from his 1 if he doesn't use it to engage. That Sobek is probably the best pick you can have in Yemoja, and if he is open and you're worried about playing against Yemoja, or they first pick Yemoja and you're worried about playing against it, just lock in Sobek. He is the best pick you can have against her. I think she's kind of like Ymir, where she's just reliant on kind of getting out of the Yemoja and CCing her, but Yemoja doesn't mind it because, like I said, she just builds beads and then just all-in's the character that goes onto her. Athena dash taunts or blink taunts. Yemoja's just going to try to turn the fight onto her. Just drop her ult, lock down this Athena, and just try to kill her. Athena might be a little bit better than the Ymir. Maybe I throw her into even just because of her safety, but she is not a very great pick into Yemoja. And this is kind of why you see Yemoja just being so broken. Is look at Yemoja's like matchup chart, like big disadvantage these gods have. These gods have slight disadvantages. These gods are pretty even. Then there's 4 gods that have a good matchup into Yemoja. Yemoja's still a late game beast, early game beast, and she can still play well into these gods, but they just have good like 1v1s into them. You pick Yemoja on her and there's a Sobek Jingwei. The Sobek's gonna get destroyed because there's no Brile there, and then Yemoja will do a little bit better late game. So even through that, it's not a 1v1. These are just how it kind of plays out in the 2v2 if both hunters are even. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, maybe leave a like, comment, subscribe if you still haven't. I have been lacking a little bit on making content outside of Twitch, but this is kind of the get back into it, and we'll be trying to put out at least like one, maybe 2 videos, not on Twitch, just informative, or I don't know, maybe even funny videos, or just other stuff that is just not gameplay. And that is going to be my my attempt, and this will be the first video of hopefully a bunch more. So if you guys have a wonderful day, and thank you again for watching the video. Peace out.